Hello, everybody. And guys, I am super excited today. It's been a while. I think I have been on for a few months. I'll say a few weeks. I think my last episode was in April, and that was because I was in school. I was doing my post grad, and it was a very, very difficult time. I couldn't combine both, but I'm back and I'm back in full throttle. So this evening, we're continuing our conversation on the love and relationship series. And today we want to talk about trauma-informed care and trauma bonding. So are you, are your past emotional wounds shaping you and your relationships? If that is yes, then it's time for you to break free from trauma bonds and build lasting, healthy, and the love and healthy relationships and the love that you deserve. So I have my expert here today, Latifat Abisola Olagoke. She is a trauma-informed perspective, and she's going to help you to understand the concept of trauma-informed care and trauma bonding as we talk about understanding trauma bonding in love. At the end of today's conversation, this is what I hope to achieve at the end of today's conversation. Just give me a minute. Something just popped up. So, at the end of today's conversation, you would gain insight into what is trauma bonding and trauma informed care. You would learn how to set healthy boundaries. You would learn how to take steps to build trust and conscious intimacy, and you would gain direct access to Latifat for practical tools on how to go about the stuff. So, like I said, that this is part of my conversation about love on the love and relationship series. I've had three other episodes, and I'm going to have a lot more. And so the first episode is Before You Say I Do, the marriage prep guide no one tells you about. And then the second one I did was When Your Heart Says No, but Everyone Says Yes. And then the third one that I did is Staying for the Children versus Leaving for your children and for their safety. So the conversation is on, and I'll be coming on twice every month for this conversation. So, in case you don't know who I am, my name is Ibi, and I am the host of this podcast, Ibi Speaks. And on Ibi Speaks, I feature experts and everyday people like you and me who share their stories and their expertise and their experience expertise, because I believe that collectively that our stories and our expertise serve as street lights and survival kits for those coming behind us. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Ibinabo Enebi, to help my channel grow. And you can follow me on my social media handles, Ibinabo Enebi, LinkedIn, Ibinabo Enebi, Facebook, Ibinabo Enebi, TikTok, and Ibinabo Enebi, Instagram. So thank you very much. And guys, you can be a part of this conversation. You can ask as many questions as you want. Latifa is here to answer your questions. So, Latifa, before I begin, can you please tell us a little bit about what you do and about yourself?
Thank you so much, Ibinabo. Thanks for having me. You've been such a great host. I follow your podcasts. It's very impacting. It's great that even as single and as married, for us to join all these presentation to become better self-aware about this what we call trauma. I've just completed my master's in social work, but let me start from the beginning. My initial qualification is in business study in entrepreneurship, and I had master in legal science, professional at Minute University. I later went on to establish a community development group in the South Dublin County Council called Afra Oropac to support minority people of African descent, whether you are living in Ireland or in Africa. In 2017, I was elected the PPA representative under the Social and Public Partnership Network in the South Dublin County Council. I worked over the 5 years, I've worked in health and social care. And I did my HDP in social policy at University College Cork. And recently completed my master's in social work at UCD.
Fantastic. You have an HDIP.
Yeah, I have an HDP in social policy. Yes.
You've just done that. I just did the HDIP as well. It was very hard, wasn't it?
It is. And I was doing it online because I'm in Dublin. So it was in Cork. So yeah, very intense.
God, you go, girl. And come on, give yourself a hug. Oh my
Thank you so
gosh.
much. Thank you. And just before I start, let me just welcome everybody that joined here by my invite. Sister Yetunde, Mr. Peter, my friend Kiki. I don't recognize the other name they're calling Opara. Sorry, I hope I'm calling that right. So, and your friend as well, Otenye. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you learn a lot from my experience, and
of course,
my my training is from a trauma-informed care perspective. So I like to see myself practice as a trauma-informed care practitioner, as a social worker when I start my work. I have CPD certification in this area as well. So just to start the training, the discussion, before we go into trauma bond, I would like to I would like to explain and get an understanding from everyone what we know, what we think trauma is. If anybody can unmute themselves and try and tell me what they think trauma is. So before I give the definition.
I try.
All right, try.
My understanding of trauma is if somebody has an injury, yeah, a physical injury, and the injury leaves a pain. The injury may be, so for example, you could have a head trauma, an impact of the pain on you.
Right, right. I
That's
think,
a vague answer.
yeah, I think yesterday also raised up her hand there. Go on, go ahead.
I did, yeah. I think trauma is something disturbing, distressing, because I experienced something like that. I wouldn't go off tangents this morning. I woke up somewhere 5:30 a.m. and I was distressed with a shred of, I didn't expect that. And I know I'm distressed because today I canceled all I'm supposed to do with headaches, So I know it's distressing. It's not my love life, but it's a commitment somewhere. And I was just disappointed, you know what I mean? That people you look up to could behave that way,
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying. So it's distressing. So I know what trauma is. I'm just getting out of it. And that's why I joined this meeting tonight, to be honest. Maybe you could help me out of that trauma. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Well, I give it a start as well.
Go ahead, please.
So I think trauma is some sort of response from disturbing experience.
Exactly.
And it could be overwhelming, and your ability to cope, it's up to God then. And it can affect you emotionally, mentally, and physically as well.
Exactly.
That's it.
Thank you so much. I think everybody has touched on what trauma is. Ibinabo said physical, which is body. Someone touched on the response. Someone touched on the distressing part of it. So, but everything is true. Nothing is a lie. So, but the definition of trauma is a response of the body and mind to a deeply distressing or disturbing event. Now we have different type of trauma, single trauma, developmental trauma. There's different types of trauma that can happen. Complex trauma, but trauma itself, it's a response of the body, how your body is responding, your body and the mind, to a deeply distressing and disturbing event. This response can lead to overwhelming stress that affects a person's sense of safety. Keyword, it affects a person's sense of safety, making you feel as though your life is in danger or at risk of serious harm. So it's a response of the body, mind to a deeply distressing or disturbing event. So when you are experiencing such experience, you can sometimes feel powerlessness to feel, so individual often feels powerless to escape or protect themselves.
Okay.
So I hope, what do you think after that definition? What do you think after that definition? Ibinabo?
Me, I think that it is a very sound definition, and it pays attention. I mean, okay, what caught my attention was that the person doesn't feel safe anymore. It's that is it the response to what has happened makes the person feel very unsafe. And the interesting thing about what you've just said is that growing up in those days, like, back home, or even before people become aware of what trauma is, people could be feeling unsafe about certain situations without exactly knowing why. Like, there was no name for it. So, for example, I had an accident one time. I was driving. I was trying to open the windscreen of my car, and the person who drove the car, that parked the car, disconnected the battery from the car. And I was only just going to wind up the glass, and the car just went backwards. It hit the gate. It hit the car rolled back to the other compound. That was in Nigeria at the time. And I was traumatized until today.
Yes.
I feel a sense.
Yeah, and that's very good, because that's just a definition under the single event trauma that you've just explained.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Welcome on board, Fatima. Nice to have you on board. That's my friend from UK. So again, when we move back to trauma, it is what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you.
Oh my God. So trauma is what happens inside of you as a result of what happened outside of you.
What had happened outside of you to you. Yes.
Oh
and events perceived as threatening the life or physical integrity of a person or someone important to that person. Something that causes an overwhelming sense of terror, hopelessness, and horror, completely overwhelming the person available coping strategies. Internalization of the experience that continues to impact the perception of safety along with the view of self, others, or the world. So I hope we get that concept. to what I've just described. So now we're talking about relationship in this perspective. So I'm going to go as far back to explain what developmental trauma is, because Ibinabo has mentioned single event trauma. Developmental trauma is a term used to describe childhood trauma caused by chronic abuse. There are some ways that we have been nurtured back in Nigeria that is a chronic abuse that has led to a developmental delay, developmental trauma. So some of these are chronic abuse, the way with physical chastisement, harshly emotional abuse that we don't count as abuse, neglect, or other harsh adversity in the home, like witnessing domestic abuse, if you know what I mean. So children who experience, or you as a child who had experienced domestic abuse, are at higher risk of developmental trauma. Then we move on to what trans or intergenerational trauma. I'm building a foundation from childhood to single events. So because there could be complex and multiple traumas, then you are now getting married and you are getting triggered and you don't know what's going on. So I'm building all this, your understanding of trauma, before we even get to the marriage type or a relationship phase. Now, intergenerational trauma are traumas that are passed down from generation to generation, e.g., poverty, abuse, war. Trauma impacts the way individual understands, cope, and heals. If we take it a notch back at social work, we have a theory. Theory is an idea, is a way of understanding a concept. One of such theory is social constructionist, how society constructs is view, how an individual see things. Now, when we say intergenerational trauma, this has been passed from generation to generation. Even there's some research that says sometimes we can carry it in our gene, because we can, if we talk about war, colonization and all.
Yeah, listen.
Hello?
I'm listening.
Yeah. So
yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So as I said, trauma impacts the way individual understand. What are your understanding before you went into marriage? What are the social constructionists of the concept of marriage for you? Has that led into traumatic bonding with your partner? How are you coping and how you heal? It can result in behaviors and responses that can cause a secondary trauma. Transferring, like intergenerational trauma, as I said, I mentioned slavery, colonization, and all of that. Even the lack of prejudice, racism, fear, limiting belief. We've always been poor in our family. I don't see the way out. Limiting belief, low or poor expectations and values, passing on poor coping mechanism, and dysfunctional survival strategy. We're going to touch on positive coping strategy, and we're going to touch on negative coping strategy later on. This is also a result of intergenerational trauma. Like we have disadvantaged area in Ireland, we have advantage area. We have a family that have been so disadvantaged that it's almost a norm not to be educated. limiting belief, poor or low expectation and values. We have a family whereby the grandfather drank, the father drank, the mother drank, and it's just the norm for the child to also be an addict. Sorry?
A drunkard.
Exactly. Now, then we build on what historical trauma is. Historical trauma is a multi-generational trauma experienced by a specific cultural, racial, or ethnic group. It is caused by major event that oppresses that particular group of people because their status are oppressed. Now, when we are talking about intersectionality of what is the makeup of a Black migrant person in Ireland, we have to not only limit it to the migration, we have to look at the historical trauma that our mothers, our great-grandmothers have went through, slavery and all of that. Slavery, Holocaust for other people, focused on colonization, forced migration, famine, war, civil war. You can see that even from a single trauma, how broad and how we can trace all this trauma back, that you can now see some triggers when you are now as an adult in a relationship. So I'm just building you up a picture. These have further compounded and passed down through generation by discrimination caused by prejudice perpetrated by social and community influence. Now, we've touched upon this. If you look at intersectionality, we can say someone from a Black minority have all these traumas. Now we bring it back to what complex trauma is. This refers to a serious event that takes over a long period of time. It could be months, it could be years, it can be repeated, it can be ongoing. An example of this is domestic abuse. So being in a trauma bonding is in a way you are consistently in an abusive emotional or physical environment. So domestic abuse counts as one complex trauma. So now, before we move further, so when I say domestic abuse, I mean is an incident or a pattern of incident of controlling, coercive, threatening, degrading, violent behavior, including sexual violence. In majority of cases, is perpetrated by a partner or ex-partner, but also can be by family or a caregiver. So before we move into what trauma bonding is, can I ask everybody, what are your understanding of toxic masculinity? Because we need to dissect these social constructionists to understand what trauma bonding is. What are your concepts of toxic masculinity? Anyone can talk about this if you're following me so far? Right. If nobody's hamstring, I'm going to play an odd.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay. So before we delve into what toxic masculinity is, for there to be a concept of toxic masculinity, then there has to be a positive masculinity, right?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Now, I have an audio that I'm going to play. So listen to this. Now, this is, again, we call it toxic masculinity because what is the positive side of it? And in the past, we have looked at it as being romantic as well, but it's not considered as possible. What has changed? Listen to this audio for a second.
Because 3 days he tells you you're my soulmate. Get out of here. You don't even know what I like to hear. Red flag. You're the only one I can keep myself with. Red flag. He's literally training you like a puppet. It's actually toxic masculinity to think that a man is a man if he screams, he's strong, he's aggressive, he hits. Bullshit. It's all cultural programming.
Psychology tells us that we actually heal in relationship, not alone. What do you think about that?
I'll tell you something though. You don't need a healer, you don't need a programmer, you don't need anybody. You are the medicine, you are the healer, you are the programmer. So they study you, they know what you like, what you think, and they become everything you want. They have a God complex. They think they're above the law, above everybody.
But that can be a red flag, yeah.
That can be a red flag. Let's have an honest conversation. How can I give?
Now, what this audio is saying is somebody telling you, I love you within 3 days, like you're my soulmate. Is that possible? Can you do? Now, it's objective because
isn't it a love bombing?
Exactly. We're coming to trauma bonding as well. We're coming to that because we're going to talk about 7 stages of trauma bonding. I love you. I'm sorry, you're my soulmate within 3 months. And then you are my everything. And being what you hope, again, we go back to social constructism. Social constructism and some religious says a man to be a provider. That's not a bad thing, but it's projecting what you've already learned as a social norm, projecting it to you. But in reality, is that what he really wants? Before you go into because all this provider and everything, life is complex. It could lose his job. You could lose your job. You could be disabled. Can we still uphold all this societal norm, thereby, accepting all this patriarchy? I'm not saying it's bad. But let's understand the complexity of life. What you go into this thinking, this is it, right? What if life happened? How do you move forward from that? Okay. So before I go forward, I'm going to go into trauma bonding. Does anybody have an idea of what trauma bonding is that they can talk about here before I explain it? Anybody? Okay, we move on. Trauma bonding is also a concept similar to Stockholm syndrome, okay? But trauma bonding is much more broader. It is a psychological phenomenon in which a person develops strong emotional attachment with someone who caused them harm or trauma. So the attachment often forms through a cynical patterns of abuse, where moments of positive reinforcement are mixed with negative experience. So we have a person, a married woman or man, it could be the man, it could be the woman, serious serial cheater. Whenever he tells you, I'm sorry, I'm this, when he's caught or when she's caught, and rewards you with a positive reinforcement, but continues to do that negative experience, which confuses you, which is as a result, the individual might feel a deep sense of connection to the abuser, despite the harm being inflicted upon them. I'm just using cheating as an example.
Yeah.
It can be anything. They can be an emotional abuser, but they reward you slightly. It's a circle of abuse in order for you.
Keep you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So In trauma bonding, there are 7 stages of bonding. It doesn't mean, it doesn't go 1, 2, 3. No, it can be anyway. It can be number 1 or number 7, number 8. It could be, but it's starting from lump bombing. Ibinabo mentioned lump bombing. We're trying to understand what is the concept of toxic masculinity. You know, you are in this relationship with all this social constructivism, expectation of what love should be. You are already in this relationship. You've been lump bombed. Lump bombing involves the sudden, intense attempt to create a we in a relationship through a high praise and excessive flattery. You are the love of my life. You are the sugar in my tea. Nothing in saying that, but there are some, when you use word, they're supposed to be an action. These are positive things that you need to see. What are the actions that followed this lump bombing? And how frequently are you getting that? How intense are you getting this? Trust and dependency. You begin to build trust with this individual. And you become dependent on the words they are using for you, even though their action is saying doing otherwise. Then it comes down to...
So 1 second. Sorry to cut you short because look, I have my pen and paper. So what happens is that you become addicted to the words.
Exactly.
To the sweet words.
Exactly.
Whereas their actions towards you is toxic. It's not changed.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, for the sake of time,
yes,
right? Because this is a very interesting conversation. For the sake of time, I would like us to quickly rush through that. And then the idea is for people who are in a relationship, people who want to get married. How would you recognize this? How, so you're with somebody that you may have a trauma bonding experience with. Number 1. Number 2, you yourself could be experiencing generational trauma.
Yes.
So the 2 things I want us to look at is, how do I recognize that I'm in a trauma bonding situation?
Right.
Or how am I even traumatized in my own way? How do I recognize that I'm traumatized? And then how do we walk through to healing?
Right. When in order to understand what trauma bond can lead to problem that affect your brain. So I've already identified what trauma bonding is. So the brain is impacted and it could result into you having post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, diagnosing with mental health, the development of chronic illnesses. You have an emotional distress. Disassociation is another mental health issue. Sleep problem as a consequence. Mental fatigue or brain fog. Flashback or emotional withdrawal. But in order to understand how to recognize this, we need to understand what toxic stress is. When toxic stress when toxic stress response occur continuously, so these are all combination of different toxic strengths, you begin to be triggered by multiple sources. It can have a cumulative toll on an individual, physical and mental, for a lifetime. Research also indicates that supportive, responsive relationship with a caring friend or an adult in early life or while in the marriage can help prevent or reverse the damage effect of toxic stress. So now, when you are saying trauma, how do you recognize it? Your response to traumatic stress can come in a response of fight, flight, or freeze. So when you are being triggered, there is something something at the back of the brain called amygdala, which is the reason why we are afraid of things outside our control. It also controls the way we react. How are you reacting to stuff? These are all self-awareness that you have to be aware of, even before you get to be diagnosed with PTSD, restless nights, and all of that. How are you responding to stuff? Maybe you are in a normal relationship that you are thinking is trauma bonding. You might just need to bring your partner into sessions like this for you to be aware. Attending events like this, free sessions like this, would create an awareness. How are you responding? It also, the amygdala controls the way we react to certain stimuli or events that causes an emotional that we see as potential threatening or dangerous. If the amygdala sense danger, it makes a split-second decision and begin to fight. Are you always fighting instead of understanding stuff? Is your
Give
fight...
me an example. Give me an example.
Like, for example, I'll give you an example of a situation whereby you might already have some inbuilt trauma in you, and maybe your husband unconsciously just said a word, and it might trigger something that he had done in the past that you guys have already resolved and gone past. It might even turn into a fight. Are you fighting over it again? Have you really let go of that past incident? Are you having a traumatic stress response? Or are you... Flight is when you try to run away from things. You isolate yourself. Or you just freeze. You have no words. Your brain is blank. These are responses that your neocortex has time to overrule it. These are happening from your amygdala, which is the brain alarm bells. So you need to become self-aware of this. This cascade of events triggers the release of adrenaline, which leads to the increase of heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing. The amygdala never forgets. Do you understand? But there are therapy you could do to relieve your stress response. Let's not forget, because we're not only talking about the bad side. So the response is to seek safety and protection. Sometimes you feel, the responsible us. This is responsible for your memory that causes you fear, sadness, upset, and triggers you. So even though you're in a trauma bonding relationship and you've gone through a lot, but how do you move forward? Counseling, therapy, attending this event with your partner to become self-aware. How are you being triggered? Emotionally, physically, psychological response? You could be triggered by noise, a certain noise. Maybe, we came from Nigeria, the more you were, the whole car thing. You might come here, just slightly noise, you're triggered.
Okay, so you know what? I am listening. This is so interesting. And I'm listening with the eye of my audience, right? So, because, I told you that I didn't want to do any research on this because I didn't want to know everything before you came. So I'm looking at maybe the malware, or I am looking at a child that grew up in a family where, this excessive correcting, like maybe you did something and they correct you excessively. Everything you do, even when you do something that doesn't really need to be corrected, there is this thing about excessively correcting. Or maybe you grew up with an authoritarian parent.
Exactly. Yeah.
That maybe would give you certain instructions. And if you don't get that instruction right, then you know that you're going to get some slaps. You grew up as an adult. You've overcome all those stuff. But maybe you now come into a situation where you have a boss. Boss is nice. Or you have a spouse. The spouse is nice. But once they begin to give you instructions, it takes you back to that instruction of when maybe your mother or your father or your uncle
now you're
tells
getting
you, go to my cupboard on the right-hand side, go and bring my blue pen. Maybe the pen is not blue, maybe the pen is brown. The person is kind of like colorblind. Then you go and look for the blue pen, you didn't see it, and you tell the person, I didn't see any blue pen, and then they now whack you. So you get to anyone who gives you instructions, you're traumatized. You just freeze.
You get triggered.
You get triggered, and and then you are afraid. Talking of the Molwe, maybe you are living in one area like that, maybe in Akpaja or somewhere, that you associate the Molwe with suffering.
Exactly. Poverty.
Maybe you have to go to school in Molwe, maybe you saw a very deadly Molwe accident or stuff like that. And then when you grow, and then even when you leave that environment, when you see that school bus that has that yellow Molwe color,
you get triggered.
So that's what the triggering is.
Right, yes. And then in order to get into triggers, we need to identify causes of your triggers. Now listen to what I'm mentioning. This could be triggers from your childhood. Now you're in a relationship. Your partner, your husband did something and you said, I'm sorry. Now you're in a relationship. Your wife did something. You said you're sorry, but you're feeling triggered. These triggers can be, I feel betrayed. I feel manipulated. I feel disrespected. I feel unimportant. I feel unwelcomed. I feel unheard. I feel left out. I feel blamed. I feel judged. I feel not good enough. I feel uncared for. This can be triggers, emotional triggers, also called mental health triggers or psychological triggers, are things, memories, objects, people that spark intense negative emotions. The change in the emotion can be obstruct, and in most cases, it will feel more severe than what the trigger would logically call for.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So, when a situation happens, the husband said something, or the wife, or whatever, or the parent, or whatever it is, an aunt, an uncle, whatever, and the person does something that triggers a situation. So sometimes the person's response to the things you've said, I feel neglected, I feel unloved, has got nothing whatsoever to do with what has just happened. So it's the baggage of the trauma that has triggered that person, that is causing the person. It's got nothing to do with the guy or the girl or the situation or circumstance. It's
or
just
maybe it had triggered a previous event but have no relative to what's happening right now.
Present. Oh, okay. Wow.
Now, we go into how to cope with triggers. We have negative coping strategies and we have positive coping strategies. Some people lean on to alcohol, substance misuse. Some people become a smoker, heavy eater, overeating, obesity, become excessive at sex. You see some men, they just, all they want is sex. Nothing, no communication, no nothing, just sex. Why is this? Negative coping strategy, gambling, self-harming, excessive shopping.
Retail therapy.
Yeah. Dependent on alcohol, cannabis, heroin, overuse can be leading to you just excessive use of anything, addiction. Even we have now people that are social media addicts. Now let's talk about the positive coping strategy. How can my partner support me to cope with my triggers? You need a safe space. You need safe people. You need positive experience. You've had bad experience. How can you create positive experience so that when you are triggered, your husband or your wife can say, my dear, do you remember when we did this? Bringing back the positive experience. You need human connection, not being addicted to social media. This platform, this section we're doing is human connection. Attending events is human connection. Engaging at work is human connection. Self-validating. I am beautiful. I am good enough. Positive self-talk. Journaling about what had happened so that you don't lose track of time when things are triggering you. Some people like to spend time in nature. Some people like to engage in swimming, sauna activities. Some people like listening to good music. Movement, having a walk, dancing, yoga, holistic therapist. Make your environment sensory soothing.
What's the meaning of that? What's the meaning of that?
Basically,
as a mom with noisy 3 or 4-year-olds, how would I make my environment that way, practically speaking?
How would you make your environment that way? Sometimes,
practically speaking.
Okay, when you said they're noisy, sometimes you can create a space outside of home that you might even go into the park and play your music on your hair just to have few minutes to yourself, to reflect on things. Sometimes it might be difficult, even financially, you might not be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? But you might need to escape that environment sometimes to create that soothing sensory for yourself. If you know what I mean, because we have family. My son used to be the noisy one, everything, but thank God he's moved. I mean, it's not thank God, he's still come home. He's moved. If you know what I mean. So
yeah, look at it. Yeah.
I'm not saying kick your children out. I'm just saying you can also go into a quieter environment to reflect on your emotions, to reflect on life, to reflect on positive experience. Get involved in writing if you're able to write. Creative projects, you can get involved with arts, creative projects. You can join local sewing group. You can connect on different things, but journaling, writing down things could also help.
Latifat, you know what used to help me?
What?
There used to be, even now, there used to be like, there is this chair that I used to sit. I still have a chair, like in my kitchen or in my living room, just one space that once I sit down there, it's nothing spectacular, anything like that. But that's my decompressing chair.
Yeah.
When I sit there, I feel like I am relaxed.
Exactly.
Sometimes I could just sit in this kitchen, right, in a corner with the lights low. I just decompress sometimes. Once I sit on that chair, I decompress, because it's not all the time that you have the luxury. especially if you have little children. If you're a single parent, sometimes it's not. In fact, I had a neighbor. It was my neighbor that taught me that. She said that whenever she was very busy. One day I went to her house and I saw her sitting in her dining. There's this long chair. It's chaise lounge. I don't know if that's the name of the chair, but just outside of a dining table, just the chair. And she just sat down there. It was dark. And I came in, I wanted to see her, and they said, "Oh, mommy's in the living room." And I went and I said, "Okay, what did they do there?" She said, "My dear, now that the corner, the one I did here, now there I go rest." It was from her I learned that.
Exactly. You know, it's good. We should make it a norm to reflect on our emotions, on our experience, to be able to say, this is the positive things this person have done. This is the negative things this person have done, and be able to come to a phase of having not just communication, because you can communicate all you like. If the person isn't comprehending what you are saying, they can't help or support your triggers. And sometimes you might need to bring them into sessions like this for them to become aware. Because sometimes, even I find out with my children, let alone partner, I'm a single mom, let alone partner, I found that sometimes my children has gone to a level that they are tired of my own voice. They want to hear somebody else. And sometimes we can grow up to that. So, participating in something like this together will allow you to hear other people's voice, what the research are saying, and become self-aware. And that's where the changes really begins. These are free sessions. Learning from everyone. You've just brought about what your soothing thing is. It could even be a teddy bear, a soft something. It could be something that gives you comfort, just to calm down and self-reflect.
Okay, Latifat, now this is I'm sorry, this is a very interesting conversation. Now, I want us to, because I want us to get as much as possible, as much as we want to get in, because I feel that there's a lot to learn here. But, I am doing so this series is about love and relationships.
Yes, yeah.
So assuming I'm talking to, or we are talking to somebody who is about to get married, because the idea of this particular series I'm doing is to help people not to make mistakes before they get married. Like it's to peel off that, all these butterflies in relationship business. Marriages are breaking up. So many people are getting married, and after 2 days or 3 days, they break up. So this particular series I'm doing it's like a reflection to ask yourself questions and say, this thing I want to go into, am I really ready? What are the questions am I supposed to be asking? And what are the things that I'm supposed to be seeing that I'm not opening my eyes to? So assuming we're talking to a young girl or a young guy who want to get married, how do they, in order for you to get married and not to mess things up, for you as a person? Okay. Oh, perfect. I'm going to answer this question. 1 second. For you as a person and for the person who is going to get married, how do we not spoil things? But in the meantime, so that if I just put that in mind, and but just because I am having some questions, let me take some questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type, and I would read them out, and our guest would answer the question. So I have this question: what happens when both partners, husband and wife, are going through same thoughts or same trauma unknown to both of them?
As I said, and I will re-emphasize, and to touch on the point as how do we prevent? We cannot prevent. It's the ability to come together and resolve things and move ahead and grow together, because you can't prepare for everything. Now, if we look at this session now, I can tell you it's probably 90% women. Even in church, there are always 90%, 95% women. Are men getting involved? Is the person I'm selecting ready to engage in this self-awareness journey on how to support ourselves? We are going to face challenge. There is nothing you can prevent. But how do we comprehend each other's way of saying things, triggers, understanding one another? How do we now not only come to this session, because I don't want to go into saying go and book therapy, and counseling and all of that, because not all of us are wealthy and rich, if you know what I mean. For little events like this, these are very important events as a single woman before you get into a relationship. When you are dating the person, when you are attending events like this, can I invite this person to participate? Because if he's not attending with you now, what is the chance when you run into difficulty of him engaging? Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so much preventing, although we can do as much engagement, sometimes we're going to reach into obstacles. But how dare can we support each other? Like the question there, what happens when both partners, husband as well, are going through same thoughts and same trauma unknown to both of them? That is the problem. If something is unknown, you can't solve it. But if we start attending sessions like this, and your partner, you can invite your partner to sessions like this, you become self-aware. Then you go home, you discuss all this. Oh, my darling, I see why you're triggered. Maybe if I communicate to you in this way, it might support your triggers. It might support your positive coping strategy so that you have less triggers. Both parties need to be willing to support one another.
I think that in addition to what you've said, I feel that in our communities, especially for those of us that are Christians and those of us that are Muslims, I feel that these are conversations that we should be having.
Yes.
Even in the churches. I feel that we should have sessions in churches where we would have trauma-informed perspectives.
But we have pastors now that only want to talk about the word of God and nothing more.
Well, yes. But I also believe that the word of God has its place. But I also believe that educated approach, a skilled approach towards certain behaviors. Like I had a guest that came in, my second guest on this series, and she said that a respected man of God prayed for them. Everybody was telling her yes. Everybody was saying, oh, go ahead and marry. But in her mind, she knew that she was making a mistake, that going into this marriage was wrong. But then she had had the spiritual blessings in court. But the marriage didn't last. So I'm saying this to say that there is a place for the word. Like I absolutely believe in the word. That if you submit yourself to God's word, it will work. However, there are some things that need professional help. So when we go to the professional help and then submit ourselves to professional help and then submit ourselves to the word, it works. You know what I mean? So I just feel that, like this thing you're saying now, there's some things that you're saying that when I look back, I'm saying maybe this thing, maybe this on a trauma. Maybe my fear of certain things. Maybe sometimes there's a way that your child will tell you something and you just react. You understand me? The child really didn't really say anything bad. Okay, like I'll give you an example. When my sisters don't know this, but I'll say it. When I was a child, my cousins took me to swim in the river, and I saw myself drowning. It was God, the hand of God, that brought me out of that water. You can remember very well that brought me out of that water. And what's my good press now? Can you see me?
We
Did
can
I
see
press?
you, but you press something.
Okay. So
Okay.
it was the hand of God that brought me out of the water. I went in, I could never forget, I was less than 10. I went in, it was in the water, then I came out of the water, right? And then I went in again. And then the thing now brought me out to the shore. When I reached the shore, that way of swimming, you remove all your clothes inside the river. I just carried my clothes, ran home. My cousins were still swimming like sharks and tilapias inside the river, right? I just went home. I did not even attempt to swim again. So because of that, and then one of my children had a nasty experience. Okay. So this is me at age maybe 7, and my child had an experience. As a matter of fact, her boat tipped. It was her brother that walked across her boat and turned the boat over. And there were people around. He didn't know. But her brother saw a boat tipped, turned, and he just, who is this? What's this boat? And she was banging on the boat and nobody was hearing it. But it was her brother that turned walked across. And it was something that you could walk across. He walked across and he turned it over. And that day, I was praying. I was praying. I was just praying in the afternoon. So you can imagine my experience and then my daughter's experience. It's trauma. So when my people tell me, say, I won't go swim for where? So that could be it as well.
Exactly. Now, we're saying our place of worship. Now, we have to, in order to understand what trauma-informed care perspective is, most services are now being trauma-informed. So what is trauma-informed mean? And you need to ask, is my place of worship trauma-informed? Trauma-informed means recognizing and understanding trauma, or being trauma-informed means that we can create a sense of safety for people so that they feel safe enough to engage in the support and recovery that they need. Trauma-informed perspective encompasses core principles such as safety. Did we create a safe environment for them? Did we trust? Can they trust that they can recover? That when they speak up, it's been from a trauma-informed perspective, being supported? Collaboration. Are we able to, is my pastor collaboratively engage in my issue that doesn't disadvantage me because of my gender?
Okay.
Choice. Do I have a choice? You mentioned there, like if you have a noisy place, what are other choices? We can't all send our children packing. When I mention things to my pastors, am I giving positive reinforcement choices that will impact my life positively? And I can choose independently without me being condemned based on my gender. Empowerment. Am I being empowered to become my best self within the service provision, within my church, within my work, within an hospital environment, with the interaction of a social worker? Am I being empowered. This is what trauma-informed care perspective means, because this is evolving into service provision in Ireland. All of this will guide the service delivery in manner that avoids inadvertently replicating unhealthy interpersonal dynamic in helping relationship. Until we all start adopting this trauma-informed perspective, we have a long way to go. And I'm going to play a final audio in response to your question about what can somebody do, especially this is targeted at women go into relationship. This is specifically before you go into relationship, or if you are even in relationship and you are objectifying other men outside of your partner. Are we ready to hear this?
Okay.
Listen now, sorry.
You're going to have to learn how to appreciate things about men without even needing to do anything more than what it is. You're going to have to learn how to look at a man and recognize, oh, this is a good-looking young man, or I really like the way he speaks, how eloquent he is, or I really love his dress sense, without the thought advancing to, what if this is my husband? We have to be able to have perfectly friendly, edifying, humorous conversations with strangers and not go home and begin to dream up an imaginary future with them. Testing your name with his surname to see how it sounds. Asking, what if this is the one? What if this is the person that I'm meant to be with? And it feels as if every accidental eye contact, every pleasant, casual conversation, every accidental brush of the shoulders or brush of the hands is fate bringing the one to you. We're going to have to snap out of this, my sisters. It is not okay. Seeing your future husband in nearly every Adam that you cross paths with is not okay. Two things. It is proof of unrest, and there's a sense in which it is objectification. We're inclined to think that objectification is something that only men can do to women, but that's not so. To objectify a person is to diminish their status in our minds from the fellow image bearers that they are, full, complete human beings that God made and is making and has a purpose for, and to reduce them to icons that can show some desire that primarily serves us. So whether that is looking at someone and looking at her anatomical configurations and thinking about how she can bring you sexual pleasure, or looking at someone and thinking about how he can fund your lifestyle, pretty much how you can make him an ATM, or befriending someone because you know that associating with them automatically makes you look more important, gives you status, gives you prestige. Or looking at someone and primarily thinking about how they can bring your missus dreams to life. All of this is objectification. Granted, some of it, is more apparent and crooked than others, but in all of these examples that I've given, you're not primarily thinking of this other person as a human being. You are primarily thinking of how this person serves an ambition that you already have, however noble you may think that ambition to be. And marriage is a noble ambition. There's nothing that captures the mystery of our union with Christ quite like marriage does. So this is not a call out on the desire for marriage. If anything, this is a call out on that restlessness that makes you see your future husband in every man that looks or sounds even remotely like you're sick. It's very possible to say, oh, this person smells nice. Maybe even throw a compliment to the person if that's possible and go about your day. When you make a new acquaintance, before your mind travels far and you spend the next 2 weeks to 1 month in maladaptive daydreaming, thinking about all the cute couple stuff you want to do together, thinking about if this is really the one, and even likely extinguishing what could have turned out to be a perfectly good friendship before it even got the chance to grow. Before all of that, you can learn to help your heart by putting a name to the characteristic or characteristics, whatever the case may be, that hold your admiration, so that your mind can learn how to admire and not drown. For example, I like the way this person teaches the word of God. Or, this is a very nice haircut. I think it suits them. Or, this person is very brilliant. I like the way their mind works. Or, yellow is a very appealing color on this person. Or, this person has a very charming smile. And it doesn't have to be anything more than that. Just simple, quiet admiration. And it does not have to become anything more. We're people of the spiritual. We have self-control. Let us become stewards of our hearts again, like scripture admonishes us to. Grace to you.
I hope that concludes my presentation to you guys tonight. So if any more questions, I hope that closes everything together.
That okay. It was a little bit I wish that we could connect it. I wish we could do screen sharing for it, because I was just hearing bits and pieces of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what I was hearing was about man, his looks, marriage, and stuff like that.
All right. I'll tell you briefly what the audio was saying. Sometimes we as women, because sometimes we can always point that men and men and men, toxic masculinity and all of this. Sometimes as women, right, we can objectify men, be it for a sole purpose of being a provider of what will benefit us in return to connecting to that person. Bottom line is, why are you going into the marriage? For is it through objectification, and then you now turn around and say, I'm in a toxic trauma bonding experience. What about you? Why have you gone into that relationship in the first place? We have to be accountable. And we need to stop objectifying every single man that looks remotely like our spec, trying to test his surname on our name and daydreaming uncontrollably. Just because it looks remotely like your spec doesn't make him compatible with you as a life partner. So this audio is just bringing you up to that sense of awareness on objectification of men. I hope, did every other person hear that audio? Everybody can unmute themselves now and say something.
Okay, please feel free if you have any questions you can type, or if you want to speak. In the meantime, if anybody wants to contact you, how would they contact you? Because I feel that this is a very important conversation, that we should be having this, especially, for like premarital classes and all this type of things. I feel that it's important that these kinds of conversations should be held. Yeah, I've really, really learned a lot. Like I learned that positive, okay, I have a question here. I learned that positive, okay, so I did, and henceforth I will make myself known in a particular spec. Let's say my looks. Okay. All right. Thank you, Latifa, for the session. Okay, so I have learned that the positive, so there's positive masculinity and negative masculinity. And the positive masculinity, or rather the positive coping skills are safe places, positive experiences. So for example, if something triggers your spouse, it could be your wife or your husband, then you could then try to like counteract the negative experience with a positive experience. And it could be also creating positive experiences as well.
Sorry?
Could it be creating positive experiences as well? Okay. And
Deliberately, intentionally creating positive experience.
do you know that something happened to me? I'll share this. So I was saying something to my husband about I was just telling him something, something that was not right with me, da 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 da. I was feeling sorry for myself. And I was telling my husband something. My husband said, no. It was like, no. Shebi the other day, you did this, that, 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 that. I said, not true. Thank you. Do you understand? So by just taking me back to something that happened positively, right? He kind of like upset that negative. And it doesn't have to be that I have trauma, but generally speaking, it's not as though that you're not hearing what the person is saying. But sometimes you can also say, but look at it this other way. Yeah. Human connections. You said human connections, the ability to connect, self-validation, positive self-talk, journaling. And you said that the trauma-informed care perspective should be safety, trust, collaboration. So it means that, for example, if I'm trauma informed, that whatever thing I'm doing, I'm collaborating with you.
You're not telling them what to do. You're working alongside what they want.
Not imposing your views on them. And you're giving them the choice okay, so which means that it's safe for you to say what you want to say. Okay, you have safety. I'm not going to judge you. Then you trust me. Okay, so if I'm traumatized, then I come to you. I trust you with your advice or whatever you're going to give to me. And then whatever steps we're taking towards progress, we are collaborating. I'm not saying do this or do that. I'm collaborating with you. And then you give me the choice and the empowerment. I have another question here. Those that are not married that are on this platform should be very grateful for the audio that was played. But for the married or single here, can also spread this audio good news we just listened to. Thank you. So this was a response to the person. Okay, to the respond to the audio. So guys, if you're just joining me for the first time, my name is Ibinabo Enebi, and I have a podcast on YouTube called EB Speaks. My name is just there. This is my name on my screen, and I want you to please help my channel to grow by subscribing to my YouTube channel. This season, I am doing a series on love and relationship. I have had 4 conversations on love and relationships, and Latifat is the 4th. And I'm still going to have some more. I'm having somebody in 2 weeks' time to talk about how to what was I going to talk about again? See, menopause, my brain is freezing. God have mercy on me. How to settle conflicts without losing spark. We're going to talk of finances. We're going to talk about older people that have been married and how you can cope in marriage. And my husband and I are also going to talk about how to cope with long distance relationships. So it's going to be very interesting. Yeah.
Can I just give a shout out to one of my very relative, Mr. Kainde Odunjimi? Thank you for joining. I can see you. Welcome. I hope you were able to join from the beginning.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kainde. We really appreciate you. Yeah, my big sister is here. My husband is here.
Really?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Very good. Amazing.
Yeah, that's good. So let's summarize this because I have just a few more minutes left. If you're going to talk to a young person that's going to get into marriage, and we want to talk about trauma bonding and trauma-informed care, what's the summary assuming somebody is listening to us on Facebook, for example, what would you say?
First of all, engage in sessions like this, which means be trauma informed, be aware, because awareness brings you into your self-awareness bring you into a light of understanding your triggers. When you understand your triggers, you are able to communicate to your partner, not just your partner, your friends, people that you call safe space. When you understand your triggers, you are able to cope better because the amygdala is because you are aware of your triggers, the amygdala, which is at the back of your brain, which is the brain alarm, is you recognize when the trigger response is happening. When you are now recognizing it and you have a safe space, someone like your partner, could be your husband, it could be your wife, could be your friend, it could be your siblings, it could be your children, could help you you can bring them along with your positive coping strategy. Now, trauma bonding is usually happen in an environment of domestic abuse. Okay? Sometimes attending sessions like this before you get into such relationship will help you recognize this before you get into it. But when you're already into it, how eager is your partner or your support system able to support you out of that toxicity? It takes two to tango. You can't be the only one pulling the weight. It starts from inviting your partner. It could be the man, it could be the woman. We're not gender stereotyping here. So you bring them into different sections like this, events like this, so that they are aware. They might also be traumatized. They might be acting from their own triggers as well. But so as I said to Ibinabo, she said, what can we do to prevent? Sometimes we can't prevent. It's the ability to overcome and grow together. Are they willing to join sessions like this? Are they willing to attend events like this with you? Because sometimes we can get tired of our own voice because of the familiarity. But when you are hearing it from up-to-date research, from expert knowledge, you become self-aware and you can help each other understand, and not just understand, comprehend. And finally, is my place of worship trauma-informed? Is my place of worship creating a safety? Are they collaborating, or are they authoritative and forcing their own opinion on me? Is my hospital, is my interaction with social worker, is it from a trauma-informed perspective? This trauma-informed perspective is evolving in Ireland, that some of the service provision are now being trauma-informed. It's about time we start bringing this learning to our place of worship and places we call safe spaces. That's
okay. Thank you very much. Now, when you talk about, I don't know, I hope I'm not going into a minefield now, but I want to ask, if you talk about if our places of worship are trauma informed, and if the pastors are not, or if the people that are not authoritarian or are not forcing anything down your throat. So, for example, if you go to the mosque and there are certain types of beliefs that, the thing is, if you're going to go to a place of worship, okay, if you're a member of a religion, it means that you agree.
Oh, we're not correcting the core value of that religion because you subscribe to it.
Okay.
When we're talking about trauma, we're talking about, can I bring my personal thing to my pastor or whatever without being. Do you get what I'm saying?
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification. So for example, if I am experiencing domestic violence and I go or immigration problem, let's just, because that's one that a lot of people, domestic violence, immigration problem, and I go and meet my pastor and tell my pastor, see, oh, this is what I'm going to do. Would I be safe enough that my pastor would not now use my story to give an example on the pulpit?
That's the question. Is it trauma informed?
Fantastic. And sometimes even some of the programs that we organize, and this is not to say that I don't like them, like Mother's Day, Couples Day. I have a friend that lost her husband. And sometimes the way we carry on with this Couples Day, this, that, we're not self-aware of other people's feelings. That some of the things that the way you're doing, even though you're happy, you could be triggering somebody. I'm going to tell you a story. I remember my husband and I went to visit someone. The person had lost their wife. And I was sitting down next to him, just putting my head on his shoulder and stuff like that. And he said, you know, because I'm like, oh, you know. And then, because we stayed with them, we spent some time with him. And I was like, and he said, we just have to be aware of the room. You know, that this person lost their spouse. So without knowing it, before trauma-informed care became a thing, he was already trauma-informed, you know, because I just sat with him and held him, and it was like, no, this person just lost their wife. You know, let's be sensitive to that.
And apart from loss of wife as well, the judgment sometimes single parent mothers go through who have gone through divorce, the stigmatization. Yeah. It's getting better now, though. It's getting better now. You understand? Yeah. This person went through complex trauma. Are we re-traumatizing them by not creating a safe, collaborative environment for them to be heard? Again, it goes back to that trigger. I don't feel heard. I'm not good enough. Are these places that I'm going reinforcing that belief?
Fantastic. Now, if somebody wants to contact you, how would they contact you? I want you to please write your contacts in Facebook.
Yeah,
can I contribute, please?
Yes, sir.
Please, sir, please.
Yeah, you guys are really doing a good job. I'm sorry that I came in very late. I will love it if you guys can take this seminar to Nigeria. You can liaise with some organizations like the big churches, where they can liberate our women, because Nigerian women, they live like slaves. They live like slaves. They're in darkness. They are passing through a lot of hell. So, and it seems religion and culture, they mix up with our culture, our values, the way we live in Nigeria. They've mixed it up with religion. And there's a difference between religion and culture. There are two different things entirely, but they've mixed everything up together. So when a woman is passing through a trauma, I will never advise that woman to go and see any pastor, because those pastors, they are contributing to their problems as well. Let that person go and see a well-educated counselor who can sit down with her and talk to her one-on-one. Don't go and see any pastor, because those pastors, most of them, they're adding sort of injury. They're adding more to their problems. They don't know what they are doing. I'm sorry to say. So I'm very happy if you guys can take this kind of seminar to Nigeria, go and liberate them, go and enlighten them. They're in darkness. Let them know what's going on, what the meaning of relationship. Because in Africa, the way we are brought up, the way Africans are brought up, women are like slaves. They maltreat them, and if you go to the police station to report them, they will shun you off. They will say you are talking rubbish. If you go and meet a pastor, the pastor will be taking side with the men. So please find time, liaise with any organization, big organization in Nigeria, see how you can penetrate that area so I can liberate them. And I'm sure God will help you. People are doing a good job. I really appreciate it. And if any way we can contribute financially, let us know. I'm ready to do that. Because this topic, I really enjoyed it this evening. Queen Latifat, well done. And Ibinabo, you are doing a good job. Please. These things should be taken to Nigeria. Go and liberate them. Go and set them free with this kind of programs. They're in darkness. Please. I really appreciate that. God bless.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for your contribution. But I just want to express a disclaimer that not all pastors put women under bondage, that some of them are trauma informed as well. But I understand what you're saying, that we need to be enlightened in these things. And yes, we are going to, Latifat, yeah, I'm there your hand, knife there your hand now.
Right.
Yeah?
Thank you so much. And I feel like there are some pastors that are waking up to this. Even this trauma-informed perspective is a new thing, even in the Western world, that they're becoming self-aware of, and they're putting into place at place of work, at hospitals, social workers, and other professional avenues. So again, you know, even we ourselves, are we trauma informed? Exactly what this is. So how we connect with people and how we engage with people is also another thing. And I do agree with you in some aspect, because even I also had experienced some pastors, as you mentioned, Ibinabo, and as Uncle Kende mentioned in the past, that you go and tell a pastor and they use your personal story, never mind GDPR, they'll preach about it to the congregation, right? You know, is it not re-traumatizing the person in public? Do you understand, about their experience? And after you've preached about it, what have you got to do to support the individual? Then there again, I ask the question, is my safe place trauma-informed? And so many people that I've invited to this, I belong to several women groups, several mental health group in Nigeria. Some of them have joined this meeting. So I'm also going to talk about another trauma therapies and recovery options in my next session that I'm going to be talking about next month on another platform, Jude Mental Health Platform. So I am always constantly educating and informing people about what trauma is and how to become. It starts with us as an individual. I've participated in this. How can I engage with these people? Pastors sometimes do change as well. My pastor is not really engaged, but how can I explain how even the pastor, is he also traumatized? What's his own background? How can I support my partner to become self-aware? Religious is getting a real attack these days, because some people don't even attend churches anymore. They listen to their sermon online and they don't engage with, so even the pastors are saying the changes that is happening. So things are changing. And I say all these changes will force pastors to incorporate this ideology into their practice for their people.
Fantastic. I hope that,
and that not just pastor, even imam, Muslim.
I hope that this is a collective call for pastors and imams and even collectively at home, but I've had a very positive experiences with pastors. My husband is a pastor, and the pastors that have grown up under, even though we didn't understand the word trauma informed, I think that I've had a very positive experience. And yes, trauma informed care is a new term, and we're going to look into it, and we're going to get the message across. Somebody says here, almost every Nigerian child raised in the 80s and 90s is going through a trauma, mostly unknown to them. That is another aspect of it. Latifa, before we go, how do we heal ourselves of generational trauma?
Well, there's some like, I'm not a therapist, number one, but there are many types of therapeutic interventions that one can engage in. All the examples of what I've given are targeted to people living in disadvantaged area, like people living under poverty. That's why I'm like, start with yourself, start engaging with free sessions like this, become self-aware. Education doesn't stop in the four walls of class. You know, there are experts, there are research coming, evolving all the times. But let me just give you a list of different therapeutic interventions that one can engage in. Of course, you know, this will be administered by therapists and experts, which I'm not a specialist in. I'm a qualified social worker. So, like cognitive behavioral therapies helps individual identify and change negative thought patterns and behavior related to trauma. That's CBT. So if you engage a therapist, they can engage with you on that kind of form of therapeutic intervention. There's another one is EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Again, this is another intervention, a specialized therapy that uses bilateral stimulation, e.g. eye movement, to help process traumatic memories and reduce associated distress. There are many, many therapeutic interventions that one can engage in, but it starts with self-awareness.
Fantastic. Now, guys, I hope you've learned a lot, but I want you to join me next time for another exciting edition of EB Speaks. I'm going to have another relationship coach talk about how not to lose the spark in face of disagreements or stuff like that. So yeah, I'm still working on it, but yeah, please, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. It is Ibinabo Enebi, to help my channel to grow. And thank you very much, everyone. I'm really, really very grateful. Thank you to everyone who left a comment, and thank you, sir, for your input. And yeah, Latifat,
yeah,
I'm gonna call you. Thank you. I'll call you.
Oh, thank you so much for everyone on the groups on different platforms that I shared this, that joined. If anybody want to have a word, they can unmute themselves before we finish and just give me feedback. I'm on Facebook, and many of you already have me on the group platform that are based in Nigeria. We've women that has different branches all over Nigeria. We're on the same group. If you're part of the group that you are here, thanks for joining. Jude Mental Health, and or even NIDO, Nigerian Diaspora Platform group that people join, and every other group that is based in Highland that I've shared this, that you've participated in. Thank you so much. Unmute yourself and give us a word if you want to. You're free to do so. And you can also, if you belong to one of those groups, that means you have my direct phone number. You can also text me to give me feedback. Thank you so much. I have another lectures on trauma and therapeutic interventions that you can engage in order to reverse the impact of trauma and reduce more triggers. I have that session next month with another platform, which is Jude Mental Health Platform in Nigeria. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. And thank you everyone for joining us on EB Speaks. And guys, listen, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. It is Ibinabo Enebi. My name is on the screen, and I will bring you more enlightening conversations. Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thanks. Thank you. This is it. It was beautiful, right?
Yeah,
You did well.
I hope I was able to address your topic very well.
Of course you did. Let me turn off.